The first visit of Mr. Stanhope Forbes to Cornwall was made early in 1884, when he started from London with the intention of spending a few months in the district by the Land's End. May I suggest 1885 as the birth date of the Newlyn School, the year when Mr. Stanhope Forbes exhibited a fish sale on a Cornish beach at the Royal Academy, that luminous open-air picture, the first of a long series painted in the grey, luminous light of Newlyn above Mounts Bay. About the time that Stanhope Forbes settled in Newlyn, 3 friends arrived from Verlat's atelier in Antwerp: Frank Bramley, Fred Hall, and Legis Southers, to be followed later by Norman Garstin, Chevalier Taylor, and T.C. Gotch. Miss Elizabeth Armstrong, later to be Mrs. Stanhope Forbes, arrived in 1885. So here at last we have the artist in the place that he loved, surrounded by friends, a lifetime of work and success before him, little thinking that the cluster of grey-roofed houses, which he had seen before him that spring morning in 1884, when he walked along the dusty road by which Newlyn is approached from Penzance, would be his permanent home. Committed to Cornwall, setting himself resolutely to paint his pictures entirely and absolutely out of doors. There was no talk about revolt against academic conventions. The only way for him, an instinct, not an effort, was to paint in the open. Henry Latang, who had been one of his closest friends from boyhood and who had worked with him at Lambeth and the Academy schools, and who was his companion at Cancale in the summer of 1880, was of the same mind. Work directly before nature was the aim of these young men, fresh from their great admiration for Bastien Lepage, an admiration that had almost become idolatry among enthusiastic young English painters of their day in Paris. If we search for the inspiration of the plein air movement in England, we need to look no further than the Salon of 1878, when Bastien Lepage exhibited Les Foins, followed in 1879 by Joan of Arc. Stanhope Forbes' first exhibited picture, after 6 portraits, was A Street in Brittany of 1882, bought by the Liverpool Art Gallery, and followed the next year by another Brittany subject, The Convent, a delicately painted plein-air picture, high in pitch, French in treatment as it was, French in subject, with feathery trees and the long, low, purple-roofed convent reflected in the water. There is little trace of the Bastien Lepage influence in this sensitive work. It has none of the rugged strength of observation and sturdy technique of his first Cornish pictures. Forbes was born in Dublin, the son of Juliette de Guise Forbes, a Frenchwoman, and William Forbes, an English railway manager, who was later transferred to London. Friends helped influence his father, William Forbes, to recognize his son's artistic talent and send Stanhope Forbes to attend Lambeth School of Art, and by 1878 he attended the Royal Academy schools under Sir Frederick Leighton and Sir John Millais. Fellow students at the Academy included Arthur Hacker, Henry Herbert Latang, and Solomon J. Solomon. In 1881 Forbes and Latang went to Cancale of Brittany and painted en plein air, like Jules Bastien Lepage, which became a technique that Forbes used throughout his career. Of Brittany, Mrs. Lionel Birch wrote, "In that most beautiful and interesting portion of France, there seemed to be found everything that an artist could desire, inhabited by a race of a distinct and marked type, wearing still the beautiful national costumes that had been handed down from bygone ages, and retaining the old language of their forefathers. Each village followed religiously the old traditions which ordered the fashion of their dress and the conduct of their lives. There was a country dear to all who love that which is old and quaint, time-honoured, and reminiscent of past ages." These stout, hearty people of Brittany provided a taste for the direction he longed for. As for Stanhope Forbes, his art is frank and forthright. He has always seemed to know what he wanted to do, and what he was meant to do. He betrays none of the feverish symptoms of the so-called artistic temperament. Studiously he went through the best schools. Studiously he began with earnest to devote his energies to grasp the natural world as honest and true as he possibly can. His technical progress was thorough, and his hero, Bastien Lepage, was ever before him, as was that master mentor was to that whole generation to follow. It would be much later that Forbes' technique evolved into the grasping for a fresh new language in his art though not as successful in capturing raw nature as it was successful in obtaining a certain poetry and finishing. He no doubt was able to see the Impressionist movement's popularity with some measure of acceptance, as is common with artists. One tries to be current, but it may not be to the generally intuitive capacity that best suit him. Forbes, however, in Cornwall, at the village he loved to paint, was at home, and he delved into the varied working occupations of the people as he had done in Brittany, France. With his small group of artist friends he would have all the pieces in place that one could ask for. After all, what is more precious than to be able to compare your efforts with your peers, that inspires one to reach within and do a real job at each new canvas? It is interesting to see the effort he took to do the many studies for pictures, a sign that while working on the spot, one must also be fully equipped and aware of the thing painted, to understand it, as in the smithy pictures of Forbes, where the blacksmith is in a dank, dark barn, his shop heating up by the iron being forged and the perspiration of his brow, all must be calculated in advance by these remarkable smaller efforts to explain the character and substance of each item and structure. Without a careful understanding of the workings and structure of the horse, for example, or the strength of the hearty blacksmith, the light source pouring in and equipment lying about the interior, it would not be believable as true and satisfying to the viewer. To work as far as possible on the spot has always been Mr. Stanhope Forbes' aim. I have carried large pictures right through to the last touch in smithies, stable sheds, and amid all sorts of queer surroundings under conditions which, when starting, seemed absolutely helpless and prohibitive. I believe that Stanhope Forbes half believes, if indeed he does not wholly believe, that painting is more successful when carried on in discomfort, and with everything conspiring to wreck it. Grit and a determination to overcome difficulties were certainly needed to carry through in the open air on the busy New Lynn beach. Such a picture as Soldiers and Sailors, a representation of the Salvation Army during a service. This was done. But to carry through in the painting Forging the Anchor, painted entirely on the spot amid the gloom, smoke, noise, and intermittent glows of a foundry, proved impossible. In the end the picture had to be completed in the studio, whither the blacksmiths, much against their will, were lured. I have never, says Mr. Forbes, painted with such directness as on those fortunately rare occasions when I have worked at sea. The lighthouse, note the drawing of the boat in this vivid twilight scene, and the subtlety of the reflections in the gleaming, glancing water, was not painted actually at sea, but in a crazy old fishing boat which lay at anchor by one of the New Lynn piers, wherein the artist with unsteady hand tried to dodge the motion of the waves. Perhaps in none of his pictures is Mr. Stanhope Forbes' capacity for painting the forthright vision of the thing, seen in its atmosphere of light, more explicitly stated than in The Quarry Team of 1894. At least one quarryman is said to have saved up his scarce shillings to buy an engraving of this picture. The Quarry Team was painted on the high road that leads to Land's End. On that road is the smithy, before the open door of which he would linger on his way home, for within were to be seen most of the things that the artist in him loved: artificial light mingling with daylight, the mystery of shadows lurking and spreading, and a wealth of purposeful men and beasts transfigured by the glow and the bustle. Smithy was painted to the noisy end on the spot, and rightly this fine work received a gold medal at the Paris International Exhibition of 1899, and a gold medal at Munich. The government would have purchased it for the Pinakothek had it not been already sold. Forbes has been true to his own manner of seeing. He is extremely devoted in his skills, but he has had the strength to know the direction of his own gifts, and he has kept determinedly to the path. His addresses to his pupils are as straightforward as his paintings. Here is an extract from the address delivered at the close of the first term, 1899 to 1900. You must not persuade yourself that you have done the work when you have got what the French call un à peu près, that is no use at all, or if anything, worse than useless. Search nature thoroughly, and get at the heart of things. It is not enough to convey something of the character of the model, to get a kind of general likeness, an approximation to the drawing, tone, and colour. Every line, every tone, you must study, and that thoroughly. Never mind if you rub out your drawing a dozen times, or if you take 10 minutes mixing a tone, so long as you get it right, but don't be satisfied until you have it exact. Stanhope Forbes stands as one of the true masters of plein air painting, his dedication to the study of nature testifying to his rare talent. A painter of rural life and the working people of a bygone era, he left behind a remarkable legacy. We hope you enjoyed this look at an exceptional artist. Thank you, and until next time, it's bye for now.